Sony announced today that they were releasing Days Gone, the PS4 exclusive, on PC.
Look, I said on a podcast recently that I was going to stop giving this guy attention, but then this video got sent to me and I just, look, I hate Me Too, okay? Let's just get on with it.
And of course, this led to the usual cries of jubilation and cheers from the PC gaming crowd, but...
Well, not just the PC gaming crowd, but also the Xbox and Switch crowd who now have another option to play this game. You gotta realize that the PC gaming crowd is not the only demographic with access to PC gaming.
It's another thing that I just have to laugh at. It's just something I have to scoff and mock and just deride you motherfuckers.
I mean, you say you're laughing and mocking us, but you sound kind of miserable right now. Like, you don't sound like you want to be here.
There are a lot of reasons why.
What are you holding? Like, what is that? I thought that was an Indo board at first. Like, my dad had an Indo board all growing up, but then I moved to Colorado, and like, nobody from Colorado knows what an Indo board is for some reason. I'm rambling. Sorry. Indo boards are sick. You should get one. They really help with your balance.
I don't think I've talked about, like, PS4 games coming to PC at all in, like, quite some time, since Death Stranding came out, I think.
Well, yeah, your mind has been occupied with other things. Other super important things. Really, truly important things.
And that was like late 2019? It's been a long time, and I think there's a lot of things to talk about this, but well, one of the core aspects of this...
Why did you change your vocal? Like, why did you change the way you were talking? You went from talking normally to then talking like a judge in a Western movie. Like, with a top hat and a mustache. Here, listen again.
A lot of things to talk about this, but... Well, one of the core aspects of this...
No, I take it back. You sounded like one of the bankers from Mary Poppins. Anyways.
One of the most important, like, when it comes to my personal life, is that, like, a high-end PC game owner...
Excuse me?
A high-C PC game... a high-C PC rig owner... how do you say that? Like,
you can do it. You can do it. One more try. You got it.
I, as someone with a high-end gaming PC...
There you go. You got it. I'm proud of you.
Am not ever going to play any of these PS4 exclusives. Like,
well, I mean, I'm in the same boat too. I have a pretty... I don't actually know if my PC would be considered high-end now. It's weird. Like, the criteria for high-end and low-end have been changing a lot over the last few months, mainly because of the 30 series being so hard to get. But I mean, I would consider my PC to be upper tier. But I mean, yeah, I'm not interested in PlayStation exclusives either. You know, I would probably buy Bloodborne. I would probably buy Spider-Man. Those are really the only ones I care about, though. But that doesn't mean I don't want these games to come to PC, because I'm not a selfish dickhead, and I understand that I'm not the only person on the PC. I understand that my taste in gaming is not everyone's taste in gaming, and therefore, more options in this industry and in this marketplace, I will always advocate for. And games going from any platform to any other platform is a good thing. It's not even limited to PC. When MLB The Show 21 was announced for Xbox, like, that game's not on PC, but it was a PlayStation exclusive, and now it's on the Xbox consoles as well. That's great. Yeah, it's not on my preferred platform, but it's on more platforms, and that ultimately is what matters. Even if it's not a game that I'm personally interested in, and even if it's not on my personal platform of choice. I'm completely capable of separating my personal tastes from what's best for the industry.
They're all garbage. They're all shit. Like, I'm not going to waste my time. They're all disposable. I would much rather go back and play...
If he names a Switch game, I swear to God.
The endless amount of classics in my vast Nintendo exclusive library.
Yep, there it is.
There's no real appeal in it for me to put PS4 games on PC, because...
Right, there's no appeal for you. So where do we go from here? There's no appeal for you, but what about for other people?
The games are so piss poor in quality that no one is seriously going to pick them up.
I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn sold really well, and Days Gone's pre-order numbers on Steam are pretty good. Stop pre-ordering games, please. But also, thanks for the statistic.
And I think we saw this with Death Stranding already, where...
Death Stranding is doing fantastic on PC. What do you want about?
Launching on PC did nothing to help the game's legacy. It launched on PC to absolute crickets. People don't want to admit that game was as bad as it was.
Well, we can take a look at the Steam charts here. I personally know a very sizable amount of people who bought this game on PC long after launch, because the word of mouth has been very kind to Death Stranding. I was admittedly pretty dismissive of Death Stranding when it first came out, and that is, I think, largely because this game was marketed fucking terribly. But then again, I don't really blame the marketing team for that, because it's just a very bizarre game to try and make look exciting in a trailer, if you know what I mean. I've been meaning to go back and give Death Stranding a chance. But my point is Death Stranding is doing perfectly fine on PC. I would even bet there's more people playing it on PC right now than there are on PS4 or PS5. Death Stranding greatly benefited from being put on a stronger platform.
In fact, Yang Ye has returned to his typical tactic of talking about Konami and Metal Gear in order to keep his views going. That's another topic entirely. But
Yang Ye is a news channel. He has to talk about that. A news channel does not just talk about one thing and then they just never talk about anything else. If you're a news channel, if you're a journalist like Yang Ye, yeah, you talk about everything. Yang Ye is one of the few games journalists who I think is actually doing a fantastic job. I don't even know if you would call him a games journalist, because he does videos, not like written articles. But then again, if you were to just take the transcripts from his videos, they would be like good articles. I don't know. Whatever. That's not the point. The point is that's a false equivalency.
The main reason I wanted to make a video about this, to talk about this, is not to talk about like my personal feelings on the matter. I'm like,
oh, this video is not about your personal feelings. Okay. Good to know, I guess.
Why I'm not buying PS4 games on PC. The thing I wanted to talk about is why Sony is doing this. Why is Sony putting what seems to be their entire catalog on PC years after launch?
Well, you just answered your own question. Years after launch. The sales for these games on PS4 are pretty much diminished at this point. They're like the future sales of these games on PS4 and PS5 are going to be very minimal. Whereas you could just throw them on PC with the brand new audience. You get the hype of new sales, and then you have the better digital marketplace for future sales. Like, it really shouldn't be hard to see why Sony's doing this. It's quite literally free money.
The answer is that they simply don't do well enough. Like, the PlayStation brand has decayed so thoroughly. It has become such a shell of its former self that in order to keep itself relevant, to keep people talking about like these IPs, these brands, these titles, they have to re-release the game.
You're, oh my God. Look, to throw you an olive branch, I do think the PlayStation brand has diminished over the last few years, but not for the reasons you're saying. I think the PlayStation brand has diminished because of the lack of variety on the platform now. The lack of variety in PlayStation exclusives. Sony is hyper focused and borderline obsessed with a very specific kind of exclusive game. I think that has diminished the brand. Because what about the people who aren't interested in that kind of game? What about the people who miss the old PlayStation exclusives, like Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper? Like, what are they getting from PlayStation nowadays? Nothing. They don't get shit from PlayStation now. If you want to play those old games, you buy an old console or you emulate them. And someone like you really shouldn't be throwing these kinds of stones, because Nintendo is right up next in this. Like, Nintendo is sitting in the on-deck circle for this exact same thing to happen.
And they can't always re-release it on a new platform. Like, they can't do re-releases on Vita. They don't have a handheld division anymore. They can't always put it on their next big console. PS4 Pro was a complete failure, which in and of itself is something that people don't talk enough about.
Yeah, people usually don't talk about things that didn't happen. The PS4 Pro was not a failure.
Wow, I've been going for 3 minutes. I've already gone off like a bunch of tangents that I need to talk about more.
No, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying your tangents. It gives me more things to talk about.
I have not been talking enough about gaming lately. What we're seeing now is Sony trying desperately to sell these games to a new audience.
Okay, what we're seeing is Sony trying to sell their games to a new audience. Where's the problem with that?
Like, they are desperately trying to put these PlayStation sellers on PC to try and incentivize PC gamers to pick up pick up the game and then maybe become interested in picking up a PlayStation brand.
Yes. You're doing the thing that a lot of bad YouTube commentators do, where they just repeat the thing back in a shitty tone of voice, and they think that's an argument. Like, you're like, ugh, Sony's putting their games on another platform to try and generate new interest in the platform. It's like, okay. Where's the problem? You repeating the scenario back to me in a shitty tone of voice is not an argument. In fact, it's the opposite. It just makes you sound like you don't have an argument. If you're a YouTube commentator or if you're someone who likes to get into debates with people, don't do this. If you don't have a point to make, shut your lips and listen, because your opponent might say something that gives you something to say.
A PlayStation console, which simply isn't going to work. Like,
it's literally already working.
Like, nobody is seriously looking forward to like Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon 1 Dawn? I don't know how the sequel...
I fucking made that joke. I made that joke. Come on. I distinctly remember making that joke like a year ago. It's an original joke that nobody thought of except me. I resent that.
Nobody's looking forward to like Horizon Zero Dawn 2 Electric Boogaloo. Like, I don't even know what like the subtitle even is. I care about it so little. Like,
it's Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West. Like, I don't care about the game either, but I remember that.
The PC game came out, like the PC version came out, and nobody talked about it at all.
Yeah, nobody talked about it. Nobody bought it. Nobody played it. Yeah.
Like, people will pretend the game is like one of the best ever for like the year it comes out, but then once the next big PlayStation exclusive comes out, it's completely forgotten.
I mean, not really. People still talk about The Last of Us 1. People still talk about God of War 2018. Two games that I do not think are very good, but people still talk about them. So no to everything you just said.
Right? People damage controlled Death Stranding when it first came out, and now it's completely forgotten.
Yeah, completely forgotten. Death Stranding, no one's playing it. That sucks.
And now we're like kind of seeing this with like Horizon. We've gone through that process with Horizon already.
Yeah, nobody bought the PC version of Horizon. That sucks.
But they're trying to like revitalize it again. Like, they're trying to do something, anything, to keep these games relevant. And
they're trying anything to keep these games relevant. Gee whiz, what an uncommon practice for a publisher to do. To re-release old games on new platforms. My goodness gracious me. Nobody would ever do that. That is a brand new practice in the video game industry.
The only way they know how, the only way they can keep it going, is to re-release the game on a new platform.
Okay, but by this logic, you have to talk shit about Nintendo too. Because they do this all the time. They're doing it next month again. Or this month with Skyward Sword. I forget when Skyward Sword comes out.
And like, PC is like the only viable way for them to do that. Like, not even really viable, you know what I mean? Like, they're just looking for exposure.
Again, what's wrong with that? If you're a business trying to add new members to your brand, like what is wrong with looking in new fields for more exposure? That's literally how this works.
They're trying to get people to think. They're trying to continue the narrative that PlayStation's first-party studios are some of the best in the world, which hasn't been the case ever. But we're reaching the point now where I don't think anybody is continuing to pretend they are.
No, you'd be surprised. A lot of people out there are kind of wrong.
Right? Like, a couple of years ago, people would have said Naughty Dog were one of the best developers anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah, people who haven't played a lot of video games would say that.
Not after The Last of Us Part 2. Like, they have Kojima. No, they don't. Like,
okay, but when's the last time PlayStation actually had exclusive access to Kojima? Like, really, people always say, like, oh, PlayStation lost Kojima with Death Stranding. It's like, when was the last time Kojima was tied to PlayStation, though?
After Death Stranding? No, they don't. Like, what we've seen over the past couple of years is the death of basically every single mainstay PlayStation IP.
It's weird that you say that, because my Twitter feed has been filled with people stoked about the new Ratchet & Clank game. And, like, I don't even run in PlayStation circles. So, like, the fact that my feed is filled with Ratchet & Clank stuff should be, like, no.
Like, all of the IPs they stole from Nintendo, the Final Fantasies, the Metal Gears.
The IPs they stole from Nintendo, like Final Fantasy and Metal Gear. You heard it here. Sony stole those. I don't know a single person who associates Metal Gear with Nintendo. I would never associate Final Fantasy with Nintendo either. Like, what?
These exclusive, the Japanese third-party devs, all these titles they introduced and hyped up by ripping all these titles that they introduced, ripped off all these rip-offs of Nintendo franchises.
Oh my god, dude, like, how long have you been doing YouTube and you still haven't figured out how to cut your commentaries? Like, you don't have to do all of this in one take.
The Crash Bandicoots, the Jack and Daxters, the
What do Crash and Jack have to do with Nintendo? Like, what do they have to do with that?
Parappa the Rappers, the
Parappa the Rapper. Apparently we stole that from Nintendo. My bad.
Spyro the Dragon, like
Yep, that's it. Just keep digging it. Just keep digging the hole.
they've all been introduced, hyped up as some of the best titles ever made, and then like immediately discarded.
You heard it here, folks. Crash Bandicoot was immediately discarded. Spyro the Dragon was immediately discarded.
They have nothing left, essentially, and that's kind of why they're resorting to this thing. And the thing I'm hearing now from PC gamers, like a lot of people, like seem to think that
Oh boy, this should be good.
Nintendo is eventually going to go this route as well.
I mean, not immediately, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Literally never gonna happen.
Clip that, save that video for when it happens.
Like, the reason PlayStation has to do this is because their brand is so weak.
PlayStation sold more consoles than you.
Nintendo has such a strong brand that people are going to pick up a Switch for these titles and brands. Like,
I mean, not really. Nintendo has a really big installed user base, but just in the grand scheme of things, Nintendo isn't really expanding their horizons very much. Like, Nintendo's installed user base is gigantic, yes. Nintendo games sell really well, yes. Nintendo consoles sometimes sell really well. But even then, what you're saying is disproved by the Wii U. The Wii U was a flop. Nintendo's not invincible, and Nintendo's brands are all vulnerable. Every single one of them. What happened to F-Zero? What happened to Star Fox? Where's Metroid Prime 4? And also, where the fuck do you get off giving Sony shit for re-releasing games? That's like 50% of Nintendo's whole MO. And then another 30% is just recycling assets and mechanics from their old games.
nobody is buying a PS4.
Yeah, they're not now. It's 2021. If you haven't bought a PS4 yet, you're probably not going to do it at all.
For Days Gone. Like, nobody is playing Horizon Zero Dawn 2.
Well, yeah, it's not out. Thank you for that. No one's playing this game that's not out. What an amazing point this is.
Like, Horizon Zero Dawn in 2021.
That's awkward.
Like, it has been completely forgotten. So, yeah, Nintendo is not releasing their games on PC.
Here's the thing. Nintendo may not give official releases for their games on PC, but what I would not be even the least bit surprised about is if we start to see Nintendo loosening their attitude towards emulation. Because even Nintendo knows that emulation is not a lost sale. Emulation keeps their games alive. And Nintendo has a pretty firm stance against emulation right now. But after the way that the industry has been moving recently, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Nintendo starts to ease up on that. Releasing a game for one console and one console only is a horrendous business strategy. It may get you short-term sales, but in the long term, it is a terrible strategy. I don't know how many times this has to be proven for people to start believing it.
PlayStation is because they're becoming increasingly obsolete. They can't compete with Xbox Game Pass.
They can, they just choose not to for some reason.
They can't really compete. They can't really compete with Nintendo in the console space.
Nintendo doesn't really compete with Sony and Microsoft in the console space as it is. Like the Wii, the Switch, the DS, those consoles have been extremely successful, but they're not exactly direct competition to the big boys. And that's part of why the Wii U failed. The Wii U was really trying to appeal to the more like HD hardcore demographic. And that mixed in with the shitty marketing. It didn't work. Nintendo has a target audience. And that target audience is not really the same kind of person that would be buying a PS4 or an Xbox One. Obviously, there is overlap in those demographics. But for the most part, no. The Sony base and the Microsoft base are very separated from the Nintendo base. And all of those bases are really separated from the PC base.
And they're trying to find...
Wait, do that again.
And they're trying to find...
Jesus Christ, why was that so loud?
They're trying to figure out like their place in the market. But they are being driven out of it. Like we are kind of at the point now where PlayStation as a brand, as a technology, as a thing, is completely obsolete.
I love how when you make these videos, your eyes aren't even open. It's like you can't even look people in the eye when you're spewing this shit at them.
You don't need a PlayStation to stream DVD to watch DVDs or play the hottest games. Like
I mean, you don't need it, but it's an additional feature.
you don't need it anymore.
Hey, you don't need a Nintendo. You don't need anything. These are games. You don't need any of them.
Like it is become completely obsolete in the year 2021.
Oh my god. Look, I don't even know what to say at this point. What the shit? I don't know what I'm supposed to say anymore. Unless good old Mr. Smith here makes a video that's really, really atrocious, I think I'm done with this guy. You're never gonna understand, and it's exhausting making videos on you because I feel like it's just the same shit over and over and over again. Exclusives are bad for the industry, and whenever an exclusive bites the dust, it is a good thing because that game is going to be preserved, and that game is going to be competing with more games in a bigger marketplace, which will have a much bigger impact on the way the industry is going. It will give a much clearer picture on what kind of games people want. And if the game is really good, it can now be experienced by more people and preserved for more generations to come. Joe from Seattle. I rest my case.